Welcome everyone to my channel. In today's episode I would like to tell you the story of an aspiring YouTuber from the American town of Mount Pleasant. A woman who really wanted to become famous. I invite you to listen to the story of Samantha Wohlford. Samantha Wohlford was born in 1989 and lived in the town of Mount Pleasant, Texas. She was a feisty and very sociable girl who dreamed of becoming an actress in the future. All her friends were aware that she wanted to be famous, and she always liked to arouse the interest of other people. But that wasn't the only dream she had. Samantha really wanted to become a mother. She had always loved taking care of young children. She didn't have to wait long for this dream to come true, as she became pregnant at the age of 18. The dream even came true doubly, as Samantha became a mother of twins. However, she did not receive much support from the children's father, who only appeared from time to time. This caused Samantha to conclude that he was not the man she wanted to spend her life with. And after 2 years of being together, the couple separated. She became a single mother raising 2 children and had to provide for them herself. She was a photographer doing newborn sessions, but in addition to that she took on extra jobs to be able to make ends meet. In 2008, a year and a half after the birth of her children, Samantha met a man at a tattoo parlor with whom she began dating. He was Ernest Ibarra, 4 years older than her. He was a bit of her opposite, as he was a rather quiet man who, as a child, spent most of his time in the privacy of his room reading books. When computers became more common, Ernest began to take an interest in them as well. It was his new passion. Since he was very intelligent, he quickly learned how to fix them. However, he took the most pleasure in playing, to which he devoted most of his free time. When he met Samantha very quickly there was a spark between them. They began to meet more and more often, until they became inseparable. When they moved in together, Ernie worked for a baseball bat company. He took a position there that allowed him to use his knowledge of computers. And the job brought him much satisfaction. In addition to taking care of the twins, Samantha worked casually at a tattoo parlor owned by her father, where she did piercings. At the very beginning of their relationship they even got along well. In 2011, it was revealed that she was expecting another child. They were both very happy, but soon Samantha and Ernie learned that they would become parents of not 1, but 2 children. Samantha was again pregnant with twins. This came as a big surprise to them. They realized that it might not be easy for them to support such a large family. Ernie was aware that he was responsible for supporting this family. Taking care of 4 young children, Samantha had enough to keep her busy. He could not require her to start working. Therefore, in order to provide a quality life for his family, he decided that he had to find another job. Soon Ernie was working at a local pizza restaurant in the evenings. He didn't mind at all that he had to work 2 jobs. He was a responsible man. However, when he returned home, he was exhausted. All he felt like doing was relaxing a bit in front of the computer screen. Samantha was a little upset that he wasn't devoting much time to his family, and especially to her. But she soon found an occupation on her own that absorbed her completely. Wondering how she could earn some money while still taking care of her children, she came up with the idea of starting her own YouTube channel. It seemed like a good idea. Samantha was an outspoken person who liked to be the center of attention, and on top of that she always wanted to be famous. The channel she ran was a mix of everything. She talked a little about her life. Sometimes she presented her reactions to all sorts of events. There were also videos on it about makeup. However, even though she spent a lot of time making more videos, it didn't grow the way she wanted it to. She had no subscribers, and the videos were usually watched by less than 100 people. However, the girl didn't give up and kept posting new videos, on which she often talked about her family, sometimes even showing her own children. Ernie was not thrilled with what she was doing. He was a man who liked to keep all his privacy to himself. He didn't feel the need to tell the whole world about his life. He also didn't like the fact that Samantha was showing her children in her videos. He also noticed that his partner was devoting a great deal of time to her channel, causing her to neglect the home. There were increasingly frequent arguments between them on this subject. Samantha believed that Ernie was not without fault either, since he, in turn, spent all his free time on computer games. Of which she was even jealous. Especially when she found out that his game character had married the character of a certain girl who played along with Ernie online. It seems ridiculous, but it was not a small problem for Samantha. To somehow defuse the conflict, Ernie came up with the idea that they would get married. Maybe this will make Samantha not so upset anymore. And so they did. The couple had a modest wedding, and soon after it was revealed that Samantha was pregnant again. She was 24 years old and had 4 children. The next pregnancy was not planned. Both she and Ernie were surprised by the result of the pregnancy test. They were already finding it hard to make ends meet, despite the fact that Ernie was working 2 jobs. Samantha had no income from her channel, and they knew it wouldn't be easy. When the family's 5th child came into the world in 2013, Samantha was still trying to succeed online. She kept believing that she would eventually succeed, that her channel would develop to the point where it would start bringing in some income. She relentlessly recorded vlogs in which she complained more and more about her husband, who was said to be not helping her at all with the children, and to make matters worse, he was becoming increasingly aggressive toward her. So much so that once she had to call the police, which ended with Ernie's arrest. Samantha did not hide how she was being treated by her husband, either from her own or his family. Ernie's relatives could not believe that he could treat his wife this way and raise his hand on her. They knew him well and considered him a truly good and helpful man. But Samantha increasingly presented them with all sorts of marks on her body to confirm that she was telling the truth. For a short period, Ernie even moved away from Samantha, but it didn't last long and the couple moved in together again. They continued to be stuck in this strange, turbulent relationship. On February 20th, 2015, in the middle of the night, someone called Samantha's mother. The voice was very unclear, but the woman could see that the call was from her daughter's number. Only after some time did she realize that it was Samantha calling. From the fragment in the conversation, she understood that someone had kidnapped Ernie and that her daughter was tied up. The woman was horrified. She didn't really know what Samantha meant. She immediately called her sister, who lived near Samantha's house, and asked her to check what was going on with her daughter. When Samantha's aunt arrived at her niece's house, she was left there with the front door open and immediately went inside and started looking for her. She went to the 2nd floor, where Samantha and Ernie's bedroom was, and there she found her sitting on the floor. Her hands and legs were still tied, and her mouth was gagged. Now you're probably wondering how she got in touch with her mother, since she was bound and gagged. But about that later. After her aunt helped her get out of those knots, she was finally able to tell what had really happened. At around 2 a.m., 3 men broke into their house. They were all dressed in black loose-fitting clothes, with masks on their faces and gloves on, making it difficult to say anything more about them. Every part of their bodies was covered, so she couldn't say anything about their appearance. 2 of them had a knife, and the 3rd had a gun in his hand. When they woke her and Ernie, they brought them down the stairs to the living room, where, all the time holding the knife to her throat, they began beating Ernie, using the pistol's handle, among other things. When they were finished, they led her to the bedroom. There they tied her up with items found in the dresser and together with Ernie left the house. She never saw them again. Samantha's aunt had already called the police, and now the women were waiting for them to arrive. In the meantime, right after she untied her niece, she went to check if anything bad had happened to the children. Since Ernie had been kidnapped, perhaps the children also shared his fate. But fortunately, the children slept peacefully all in one room, which actually surprised the aunt, since they usually slept in different rooms. After the police arrived, Samantha described in detail what had happened. She was distraught. She didn't know who could have done such a thing and why. Certainly no one had kidnapped the Ernie for ransom. They could barely afford any ransom. As she talked to the police officers, she recalled that the kidnappers, while talking among themselves, said something to the effect that it might have something to do with Ernie's father. Apparently it was revenge for something his father had done to someone. Samantha was taken to the police station for questioning, and the officers began to take a closer look at the scene of the kidnapping. Right from the start, they thought something didn't add up there. There were too few traces of blood in the house for Ernie to have been severely beaten with a gun. The officers were also surprised by her description of the assailants. They were dressed in black from head to toe, in clothes and shoes with no distinctive marks on them, such as company logos, topped off with black gloves and black masks on their faces. It seemed all the way impossible. It was also strange that none of the children were awake during the assault. The beating occurred in the house and, according to Samantha's description, was accompanied by screams. The oldest children were 8 years old, so awakened by the noise. They could have come out of their bedroom to see what was going on. However, all 5 were sleeping peacefully. Nothing was lost from the house except the Ernie's phone, which also seemed suspicious, since usually burglars take more valuable items when given the opportunity. Nothing matched the story the young mother told. The police officers who questioned Samantha were surprised that instead of calling the emergency number right away, she called her mother. And in general, how did she do it when her hands were tied behind her back and her mouth was gagged? And here Samantha surprised them a bit by saying that she used her nose to dial the number. It wasn't easy, and she didn't care about calling her mother. She simply dialed the first number on the list of recent calls, and it just so happened to be her mom's number. The policemen realized that the girl knew more than she was telling them. They tried to get as much information from her as possible, but Samantha, using her acting skills, kept confirming her version of events, pointing out that in fact Ernie's father may have been involved in all this, who supposedly reported someone and now that person is trying to get revenge on him. She heard the kidnappers say that they would take him to his father's house. A police patrol was sent to Ernie's father's house to see if he was there. But while they were going there, information was obtained about the location of Ernie's phone. It was located in the town of Pittsburgh, about 20 kilometers away from where they lived, in a completely different place from where Ernie's father lived. The patrol that was supposed to go to his father's house was directed to Pittsburgh, but when they were on their way the phone was turned off and there was no way to locate it. Eventually they went to Ernie's father's house, but found no one on the spot. The police officers still felt that the story with Ernie's father was not the one they needed to hear, and they continued to try to get out of Samantha what she refused to tell them. What she was telling them did not add up to a logical whole. Every now and then she added something new. And finally she admitted that she wasn't sure, but suspected who might have done it. A few days before the kidnapping, she had been in the hospital to visit her friend who had just become a mother. She wasn't the only one visiting. Her partner Jonathan Sanford was also there. And while everyone was talking, Samantha complained a bit about her husband's behavior, about how he neglects her, and about his aggressive behavior toward her. Jonathan stated that he could take care of it, he would help her solve the situation. Samantha did not take his words seriously, she thought he was only joking. Was Jonathan not joking and kidnapped Ernie to teach him a lesson for mistreating Samantha? The policeman had to act quickly, all the while there was hope of rescuing Ernie. Samantha helped them locate Jonathan, who was supposed to go to the hospital that day to pick up her friend with the baby there. He was stopped on the spot along with another man, who, as it later turned out, was his brother-in-law Jose Ponce. Both were arrested and taken in for questioning. The men immediately cooperated with the police and told them exactly how the event unfolded. In fact, it was as Samantha said, at least at first. They met at the hospital, where Samantha told them about how she was being treated by Ernie. Because both Jonathan and Jose believed that a woman should not be treated this way, and certainly not the mother of children, they decided to help Samantha. They thought it would be a good idea to send Ernie to prison for a period of time, so that there he would have time to think about his behavior. To do this, they had to involve one more person, Octavius Rhymes, who was to arrange for them to get a larger quantity of drugs, which they were to drop off in Ernie's car. After that, they wouldn't have to do much but call the police anonymously and inform them. At first they followed the plan and bought what they needed, but when they started thinking about this scenario, they came to the conclusion that maybe it would be better to kidnap him and get rid of him once and for all. Then they wouldn't have to call the police and involve them in the whole plan. However, they didn't want to make this decision on their own and met with Samantha once more, the day before the plan was executed. The girl was not convinced by the idea. She needed more time to think about it. Therefore, they agreed that if she decided to take this step, leave the door unlocked. They will then know that they are acting according to Plan B. If the door is locked, that means Plan A is in effect. The men still wanted to make sure what Samantha would do with the children if they acted on the second plan. But the woman assured them that they needn't worry about anything. She would give them some sort of remedy, after which they would sleep heavily and nothing would be able to wake them up. Jonathan testified that when they arrived at Samantha's house, the door was open, which was an obvious sign to them of what to do. They dragged Ernie out of bed, beat him up and put him in Samantha's car. They returned home to tie Samantha up because they thought it would look more believable. Before they did so, the girl quickly called her mother. The kidnappers took Ernie to the forest, where they planned to kill him. He begged them to spare his life, and if not him, at least let them spare his family. According to earlier arrangements, it was Jonathan who was supposed to pull the trigger, but before he did, Jose took out his gun and pointed it at the back of Ernest's head. Jose's version was quite different. It was Jonathan who was supposed to kill Ernie while he was lying on the ground. He showed the investigators the course of the entire incident, where who was located. The men blamed each other, and police officers at the time could not tell which of them was telling the truth, but sometime later they already knew who had killed Ernie. Jonathan pointed out to them the location of Ernest's body, and at that point it was easy to tell that the bullet had hit the back of his head, which meant that Jonathan was telling the truth. 3 days after Ernie's kidnapping, Samantha was asked to appear at the police station, where, to her great surprise, she was arrested. Her phone was checked and investigators had confirmation that she was involved in the whole story. She was well aware of what would happen that night. After police officers located Ernie's phone, they asked her if she knew anyone in Pittsburgh. The woman denied it, but just moments later she sent a message to one of the kidnappers to immediately turn off the phone and get rid of it. On February 26th, the last person implicated in the kidnapping and killing of Ernie, Octavius, was arrested. The man had insisted all along that he was innocent. He knew that the kidnapping of Ernie would occur, but did not know that he would be killed that night, according to the plan. Jonathan and Jose pleaded guilty to kidnapping and murdering Ernie and were sentenced in April 2016 to 50 years in prison on each count. These sentences are concurrent, and early parole can be sought after 25 years. Samantha and Octavius have maintained all along that they are innocent, which is why they had to stand trial. The woman tried to defend herself by saying that she had taken strong sleeping pills that night and remembered little of what happened after the kidnapping, and certainly did not remember sending a message to the kidnappers to get rid of the phone. She testified that she doesn't know Jonathan, having only seen him once at the hospital. However, Jose's girlfriend, who witnessed a meeting where details of the kidnapping were discussed, testified that Samantha was present at the meeting. The jury did not believe Samantha's words, and she was sentenced to 99 years in prison for murdering her husband and 50 years for kidnapping. Octavius also pleaded not guilty, which resulted in a rather high penalty, 23 years in prison for kidnapping and 75 years for Ernie's murder. In their case, the penalties add up, meaning Samantha received a sentence of 149 years and Octavius 98 years. They can apply for early parole after serving a minimum of half of that sentence. It is not known what the motive for this crime was, whether in fact Samantha was treated so badly by Ernie, for which there is no evidence, and which his family does not believe. Maybe she simply did it to arouse interest in her person. We will probably never know. This is the end of this story. Thank you for listening to the end. Goodbye.